I said don't move. Put your hands behind your back right now. You are resisting arrest.
It was 8:42 p.m. on a Thursday night. The kind of night where the city feels restless but half asleep. Streetlights buzzed overhead, their pale glow stretching across wet asphalt as cars hissed past, throwing mist into the air. On the corner of Maple Street and 17th Avenue, a black man in a dark hoodie stood beside his parked sedan, one hand resting casually on the roof, the other holding a phone to his ear. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't nervous. His posture was relaxed, his breathing steady, his eyes sharp but calm. To anyone passing by, he looked like just another guy finishing a call before heading home. Then the patrol car slowed. The engine dropped into a low growl as it rolled to a stop at the curb. Red and blue lights flashed once, briefly, washing the sidewalk in color before going dark again. The driver's door opened hard. Officer Daniel Cross stepped out, already irritated, already convinced he knew exactly what he was looking at. "Hey," he barked. "Hands up. Now." The man turned slowly, deliberately, raising both hands to shoulder height. His phone clattered to the ground. He didn't argue. He didn't flinch. "Is there a reason you're stopping me, officer?" he asked, his voice level, almost clinical. Cross didn't answer the question. He circled closer, boots splashing through a shallow puddle, eyes locked on the hoodie. The skin color, the quiet confidence he mistook for defiance. "Don't talk," Cross snapped. "Just do what you're told." What Cross didn't know, what he couldn't see, was that 2 blocks away, inside an unmarked van with blacked-out windows, a team of federal agents were watching this exact moment unfold on multiple screens. Every movement, every word, every decision, and he had no idea that in exactly 7 minutes, the man standing in front of him would turn his badge into a liability, his authority into a crime, and his career into a cautionary tale that would echo far beyond this dark, wet street. The man in the hoodie didn't lower his hands. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood there, breathing evenly, eyes tracking Officer Cross with a precision that came from long habit. His name was Marcus Reed, though no one on that street knew it yet. And that anonymity was exactly the point. Marcus wasn't a civilian caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. He wasn't a suspect. And he wasn't powerless. He was the assistant special agent in charge of the FBI's Violent Crimes Task Force, the highest-ranking field operative in the state. 15 years in federal service had taught him how to read a room, how to measure danger, and how to recognize the moment when ego outweighed reason. Tonight, he wasn't wearing a suit or a badge. He wasn't surrounded by backup. He was undercover, stripped down to a role and a risk, playing a man who blended into the city so completely that no one would look twice. That hoodie wasn't a disguise. It was camouflage. Inside the unmarked surveillance van, 2 blocks away, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. Live video from a pole camera zoomed in on Marcus's raised hands. Audio from the mic taped beneath his shirt crackled softly in the headsets of the agents watching. Visual confirmed. A voice murmured, "Units in position." Another replied, "This stop wasn't supposed to happen, not like this." Marcus was waiting for a very different kind of encounter. The FBI had been tracking a gun trafficking pipeline for nearly 2 years, one that fed weapons straight into the hands of violent crews. Tonight's operation was designed to expose who inside the system was protecting them. Marcus kept his tone respectful. "Neutral. Officer, if you tell me what the issue is, I'm happy to cooperate." Officer Cross heard the words, but he didn't process them. All he saw was a man who didn't look afraid. And to him, that was a problem. He took another step forward, hand drifting closer to his belt. "Turn around," Cross said, slowly. Marcus complied without hesitation. But as he did, he spoke one quiet sentence into the night, barely moving his lips. "Stay back. Let this play out." The clock had started. Officer Cross moved closer, his presence filling the narrow strip of sidewalk like he owned it. Rainwater dripped from the brim of his cap as he studied Marcus from behind, searching for something, anything that would justify what he'd already decided to do. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. "What are you doing out here this late?" Cross demanded. "Standing by my car," Marcus replied evenly. "I was on the phone." Cross snorted. "Funny, because we just got a call about a robbery in this area." Marcus's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. He knew there had been no robbery. The FBI monitored every relevant dispatch channel in real time, and nothing had crossed the wire. This wasn't information. It was invention. "Can you describe the suspect?" Marcus asked calmly. Cross hesitated for half a second, then waved a hand dismissively. "Black male. Hoodie. About your height. That good enough for you." It was the oldest trick in the book. A description so vague it could swallow half the city. Cross stepped closer, his voice rising, feeding off his own authority. "I'm going to need to see some ID. My identification is in my back pocket." Marcus said, "Before you reach for it, you need to understand something." Cross's expression hardened. "I don't need to understand anything. Turn around. Hands behind your back." Marcus complied slowly, deliberately, making sure every movement was visible, non-threatening. He wasn't afraid of Cross. What concerned him was the arrogance, the certainty that this officer could do whatever he wanted without consequence. As Cross's fingers brushed against the cuffs on his belt, Marcus spoke again, his voice low but unmistakably clear. "My name is Marcus Reed. I am a federal law enforcement officer." For a moment, Cross froze. Just a flicker of doubt, a crack in the armor. Then his face twisted into a grin. "Yeah," he laughed. "And I'm the governor. Save it." The metal cuffs came off the belt. The decision was made. Marcus closed his eyes briefly as the first cuff snapped shut around his wrist. At that exact moment, the stop crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The second cuff clicked into place with a sharp metallic snap, echoing louder than it should have in the quiet night. Officer Cross tightened it unnecessarily, twisting Marcus's arm just enough to make a point. It wasn't procedure. It was dominance. Marcus didn't resist. He didn't pull away. He let his shoulders go loose, his body language deliberately compliant. The pain registered, but he pushed it aside. This wasn't about comfort anymore. This was about documentation. "You like playing games," Cross muttered, guiding Marcus toward the patrol car. "We'll see how tough you are at the station." Marcus kept his gaze forward, rain streaking down his face. To anyone watching, he looked like a man being arrested. To the team listening through the mic, he was a clock. Into the collar of his hoodie, barely moving his lips, Marcus spoke calmly. "Cuffs on. No resistance. Proceed." In the surveillance van, a silence fell. Agents exchanged looks. Jaws clenched. Every instinct told them to move in, to shut this down immediately. But they didn't, because now the officer hadn't just made a bad stop. He had committed a felony. Cross shoved Marcus into the back seat and slammed the door. The cruiser rocked slightly as he walked around the hood. satisfied. Convinced he'd just done his job. He didn't notice the small red dot blinking beneath Marcus's sleeve. Transmitting everything in real time, as the engine started and the car pulled away from the curb, Marcus leaned back against the hard plastic seat, breathing slow and controlled. He stared out the rain-streaked window as the streetlights slid past. 1 minute gone. Officer Cross had no idea that every second he kept driving was another charge stacking quietly against his name. Another nail sinking into the coffin of a career he still believed was untouchable. The patrol car cut through the wet streets with no urgency, windshield wipers slapping back and forth in a steady, almost lazy rhythm. Officer Cross drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting comfortably near the radio, already acting like the hard part was over. In the back seat, Marcus sat perfectly still. His hands were cuffed behind him, shoulders squared, posture controlled. He wasn't slouched like a defeated suspect. He looked like a man waiting for something inevitable to arrive. Cross glanced into the rearview mirror and smirked. "Funny thing about guys like you," he said. "Always got a story. Lawyer. Veteran. Federal agent. You ever notice that?" Marcus didn't answer. Cross took the silence as permission to keep talking. "Let me guess," he continued. "You were just minding your business. Wrong place. Wrong time." "That about right. I was minding my business," Marcus replied calmly. Cross snorted. "Sure you were." He slowed at a red light and turned halfway in his seat. "You got anything on you I should know about weapons, drugs, large amounts of cash?" "No," Marcus said. "Nothing illegal." Cross chuckled softly, shaking his head. "We'll see about that." Those 4 words would later be replayed in a federal courtroom, dissected frame by frame. But right now, Cross heard them as confidence, as authority flexing its muscle. He believed the uniform insulated him from consequences. The precinct came into view. A squat concrete building glowing under fluorescent lights. Cross pulled into the lot and parked crooked, like he owned the place. As he stepped out and opened the rear door, he leaned in close, his voice low and mocking. "You know what happens next. Right, by the time you're done inside, nobody's going to remember you," ever said FBI. "Minister." "Minister?" inquired. Marcus met his eyes, unblinking. "You still have time to stop," he said quietly. Cross laughed and slammed the door. 3 minutes down, the doors of the precinct slid open with a tired mechanical whine, and Officer Cross marched Marcus inside like a trophy. The smell of stale coffee and disinfectant hung heavy in the air. Phones rang at the front desk. A drunk laughed somewhere in the holding cells. It was all painfully ordinary. Cross thrived in this environment. This was his kingdom. Disorderly conduct. He announced loudly as they approached the booking desk. Possible resisting. Claims he's federal. A few heads turned. A couple of officers snickered. The desk sergeant, a graying man with tired eyes, glanced up from his computer and looked Marcus over carefully. "He give you trouble?" the sergeant asked. "No," Cross replied too quickly. "But he will." Marcus stood silently, hands cuffed, expression neutrale. His eyes scanned the room, noting the camera angles, the exit routes, the way officers positioned themselves when they thought no one was watching. The sergeant leaned back in his chair. "Did you run his name?" Cross waved him off. "Don't need to. He fits the description." What description? The sergeant pressed. Cross's jaw tightened. "The one from the robbery call." There it was again. A robbery that didn't exist. Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You should run me." Cross spun toward him. "You don't give orders in my station." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Marcus could hear. "You think flashing a fake badge is going to scare me? I've been doing this long enough to know when someone's bluffing." The sergeant hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He sensed something was off. But years of habit kicked in. He deferred. "Book him." Cross snapped. The keys clacked. The system logged the arrest. Somewhere deep inside the building, a phone began to ring. 4 minutes gone. The ringing cut through the noise of the precinct like a blade. It wasn't the regular desk phone with its dull, familiar tone. This one was sharper, more urgent. The sergeant froze when he saw which line was lighting up. He picked up the receiver slowly. "Desk," he said. At first, he nodded, listening. Then his posture straightened. The color drained from his face as if the blood had been pulled out of it all at once. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. He's here." Officer Cross frowned. "What is it?" The sergeant didn't answer him. He turned his eyes toward Marcus Reed, really looking at him now for the first time. Not at the hoodie, not at the cuffs, at the man. "Yes, sir, I understand," the sergeant continued, his voice tight. "Right now." He lowered the phone and swallowed hard. "Who was that?" Cross demanded. The sergeant hesitated, then spoke carefully. "That was the captain." Cross scoffed. "Tell him I'm in the middle of processing an arrest." The sergeant shook his head slightly. "He says to stop processing. Immediately." Cross laughed. A sharp, dismissive sound. "You serious right now?" The sergeant leaned closer, dropping his voice. "He wants to know why the FBI just called him asking why one of their agents is being held in our booking area." The room seemed to shrink. Cross stared at him, then burst out laughing again. Louder this time. "Come on. That guy." He jerked his thumb toward Marcus. "That's a joke." Marcus finally spoke, his tone calm, almost gentle. "Officer, check the time." Cross glanced at his watch, irritation flashing across his face. 7 minutes had passed since the cuffs went on. Before he could say another word, a deep, thunderous impact shook the front doors of the precinct. The impact hit the building like a shockwave. Dust rattled loose from the ceiling tiles as the front doors of the precinct slammed open with a violent crash. The sound echoed down the hallway, instantly silencing every conversation in the room. "FBI, nobody move." The command wasn't shouted by one voice, but many layered, controlled, absolute. Heavy boots thundered across the floor as agents in Navy tactical gear poured into the lobby. Weapons raised but disciplined. Eyes scanning with mechanical precision. Bright yellow letters across their vests left no room for doubt. Officers froze mid-motion. A coffee cup slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the tile. A few instinctively reached toward their belts, then stopped when they saw how badly they were outmatched. Officer Cross stood rooted in place, his confidence draining from his face. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. Marcus Reed straightened, the cuffs still tight behind his back. His voice cut cleanly through the chaos. "Federal extraction," he said. An older agent in a windbreaker marked FBI. ASAC stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Marcus immediately. He didn't waste time. "Who put cuffs on Special Agent Marcus Reed?" the man demanded. Silence. Every officer in the room took a step back, unconsciously creating space around Cross. He looked around, suddenly aware of how alone he was. "I did," Cross said finally, trying to recover his authority. "And I had probable cause." The ASAC turned toward him slowly. His expression didn't show anger. It showed disappointment. "Hands behind your back," he said calmly. Cross blinked. "Excuse me," I said now. The sound of handcuffs closing rang out again, but this time, they weren't on Marcus Reed. The power in the room shifted so fast, it felt physical, like the air itself had tilted. Officer Cross's wrists were pulled behind him, the steel biting into his skin as the cuffs locked shut. For a moment, he just stood there, stunned, trying to process how fast everything had unraveled. This was his station. These were his people. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. "You can't do this," Cross protested, his voice rising. "This is my arrest. This is my precinct." The ASAC stepped closer, lowering his voice but not his authority. "You lost that right the moment you put hands on a federal agent." Marcus was uncuffed and gently guided forward. He rolled his shoulders, flexing his wrists, the red marks from the cuffs already visible. His badge was clipped to his belt now, unmistakable in the harsh fluorescent light. He looked at Cross, not with anger, but with a calm certainty that was far worse. "You arrested me without probable cause," Marcus said. "You ignored multiple verbal warnings. You falsified the basis for the stop." Each sentence landed like a hammer. "You are now under investigation for assault on a federal officer, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and violation of civil rights under color of law." Around them, officers stared at the floor. No one spoke up. No one defended Cross. The blue wall had cracked, and everyone could feel it. Cross swallowed hard. "This is a misunderstanding," he muttered. "We can clear this up." The ASAC shook his head. "We already did." Agents moved through the precinct, securing body cameras, pulling footage, collecting reports. What had taken Cross years to build a reputation. A sense of untouchability was collapsing in real time. Marcus stepped past him toward the exit, surrounded by federal agents. As he passed, he spoke one final sentence. Quiet but devastating. "I told you to stop." Cross watched him go, the realization sinking in at last. He hadn't just arrested the wrong man. He had tested the wrong system and lost. The fallout didn't take days. It didn't take weeks. It began the moment the FBI sealed the precinct. Doors were locked. Radios were taken. Computers were pulled from desks while agents moved with practiced efficiency, already knowing exactly what they were looking for. Officer Cross sat in an interview room, hands cuffed to a metal ring in the table, staring at the wall as his world collapsed piece by piece. The bravado was gone now. No jokes. No smirks. Just the quiet panic of a man realizing his badge had been the only thing keeping the truth at bay. On the other side of the glass, Marcus Reed stood with 2 federal prosecutors and an internal affairs investigator. Screens lit up with timelines, call logs, and financial records. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Every time a major weapons bust was about to happen, Cross had been on duty. Every time suspects slipped away, Cross had been nearby. A bank account in his name, hidden behind a shell company, showed regular deposits that didn't match his salary. Text messages linked him directly to known intermediaries connected to organized crews. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't bias alone. This was corruption. Marcus watched silently as the evidence stacked higher and higher. The stop on the street hadn't been random. Cross had been probing, testing boundaries, confident that nothing would happen if he pushed hard enough. The truth was colder than that. The stop had exposed him. By the time Cross was read his federal rights, The charges were already being drafted. The officer who once believed he was untouchable was now just another suspect, staring at a future measured in court dates instead of promotions. And there was no way out. 6 months later, the courtroom was packed to the walls. Camera crews lined the back, reporters whispering into microphones as they waited for the judge to enter. The case had become a national headline, not because an officer made a bad stop, but because everything the stop uncovered was far worse. Officer Daniel Cross stood at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled to his waist. He looked smaller now, thinner. The confidence that once defined him had been replaced by a hollow stare fixed on the floor. The judge's voice carried through the room, calm and merciless as the charges were read aloud. Assault on a federal officer, obstruction of justice, civil rights violations, conspiracy to protect criminal activity. Each count chipped away at whatever hope Cross still clung to. When it was time for sentencing, the courtroom fell silent. For years, the judge said, "You abused the authority entrusted to you. You didn't just violate the law, you weaponized it." Cross's lawyer stood, trembling, and asked for leniency. The judge didn't look at him. "You stopped a man because of how he looked." The judge continued, "And in doing so, you revealed who you truly are." The gavel came down. 20 years in federal prison. Immediate termination. Pension forfeited. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cross's knees buckled as marshals grabbed his arms. From the gallery, Marcus Reed watched without expression. This wasn't victory. It was accountability. And it was final. 7 minutes. That was all it took for a routine street stop to become a federal case. 7 minutes for authority to turn into a crime. 7 minutes for a badge to lose every ounce of power it once carried. Officer Daniel Cross thought he was in control. He thought the uniform made him untouchable. He thought a hoodie told him everything he needed to know about the man standing in front of him on that wet street corner. He was wrong. Marcus Reed never raised his voice, never fought back. He let the system work the way it was designed to, by documenting, by waiting, by allowing arrogance to expose itself. Cross wasn't taken down by force. He was taken down by his own decisions. Recorded second by second. This story isn't just about one officer or one arrest. It's about what happens when power is abused and when assumptions replace judgment. It's about how quickly the tables can turn when the person you underestimate turns out to carry the full weight of the law. Some people think justice is loud, that it comes with sirens and shouting. But sometimes, justice is quiet. Sometimes it arrives on a timer you didn't even know had started. 7 minutes. That's how long it took for a man who thought he was above the law to learn a lesson the hard way: no badge, no uniform, and no ego is bigger than the truth. And once the clock runs out, there is no rewinding it.